Mr. Chairman, I find myself in the uncomfortable position of agreeing almost entirely with Senator Lankford. When I was governor, I did a lot of work on environmental permitting in Maine. And what I said was, I want the highest environmental standards and the most timely and predictable permitting process. And quite often the problem is the process. It's not necessarily the standards. So I agree that I think that's something that we need to attend to. One thing that we did in Maine that perhaps we should be talking about here is one-stop shopping. You go to one agency that handles all the permitting, and they coordinate the activities of the other agencies. So I do think that this is something that we need to discuss, because we are going to have to, as we go to move away from fossil fuels, which, by the way, is a kind of mining, to a different kind of mining, we're going to have to deal with this problem. We can't wish it away, and we can't just say, oh, we're going to build lots of windmills, which I used to do, by the way, or solar panels. But we've got to think about where these minerals are going to come from. And as Senator Lankford pointed out, the pandemic taught us we should not be dependent upon our pacing adversary or potential adversary to supply minerals that are critical to the development of our economy. So I think that's an important point. Mr. French, I want to change the subject entirely. We had your boss, I'm not sure she's your boss, head of the Forest Service, Ms. Christensen, was here earlier this week.
She's my boss.
So, okay, some significant data came out in that hearing. In 1988, we harvested 13 billion board feet off of federal land in this country. Today, it's 3 billion. She testified that dramatic cut in the harvesting of timber in our federal lands has contributed substantially to the fire problem. Do you agree with that?
What I would say is that
she's your boss.
Yeah, no. She and I talk about this and work on this all the time. The issue is, to reduce wildland fire risk, we have to remove understories and small diameter trees from areas that have no value.
Which in Maine we call pre-commercial thinning.
Absolutely. We have to pay for that most of the time.
But that involves working the forests in a productive way in order to, if you have greater harvesting, you have more pre-commercial thinning, because that makes the timber more valuable, and that lowers the fuel load on the floor of the forest. Is that correct?
In some places, yes.
But will you confirm that this dramatic drop from 13 billion to 3 has contributed to the fire risk, along with, of course, climate change, drought, heat, and all of those elements?
Senator, it has been a contributing factor in some places, but not everywhere. So if you look in and around, let's say, Southern California and some of those forests there, which are non-commercial type areas, it's a very different scenario.
Well, and the grasslands that you testified, that's a separate issue, I understand. But I think we can't ignore this is one of these things, we can't ignore the fact that we're not clearing out the understory, and then we're going to have fires. Let me move on for a minute. Ms. Hogan, I found myself again in the uncomfortable position of agreeing with Mr. Mills. Research is critical, and I hope that in all of this practical application, we not neglect the importance of basic research. For example, I believe one of the greatest barriers to a carbon-free future is storage. It may be batteries, it may be molten salt, it may be other technologies, but if we can beat the storage problem to deal with the intermittency of solar and wind, that's a big deal, and research is where that needs to take place. So is that a commitment of your department?
It's a tremendous commitment of our department. We totally agree with you.
On the mining, I just want to touch quickly. I agree. I think recycling, Mr. Mayor, we've got to do a lot better job with that. We don't have to. We can mine our dumps instead of digging holes in the ground. There's a tremendous resource there. One place I do disagree with Mr. Mills is on, well, I just want to raise a red flag about LNG exports. Two problems that I'm concerned about. One is effect on domestic prices. So we can't repeal the supply and demand. Even this committee can't do that. And as supply is distributed across the globe, it's taken away from domestic, and I'm just gravely worried about effect on domestic prices. Australia did a huge export step, and their domestic prices went through the roof. So that's concern number two is, it's true, and I've always been an advocate of natural gas as a transition fuel, that it does burn cleaner than coal, oil, and other fossil fuel alternatives. The problem is when you count the methane attributed to the extraction of natural gas actually comes out right equal with coal. And so if we don't deal with the methane issue that's connected with the transportation and mining of natural gas, we're not going to gain anything environmentally. That's a critical part of a clean energy future, and particularly a short-term clean energy future as we move to natural gas. But if that natural gas has the methane implicit content, we're not going to gain anything in terms of carbon and effect on the not carbon, but effect on the atmosphere, because as we all know, methane is about 80 times as potent a greenhouse gas as CO2. So this has to be something that we have to pay attention to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.